For a stretch of time that's almost impossible to wrap your head around, they were the undisputed rulers of our planet. We're talking about creatures so huge they'd make our buildings look small, with jaws that could snap bone like a twig. They were, without a doubt, the masters of Earth.
Just think about that number for a second. 170 million years. It was literally an empire of teeth and claws that spanned entire geological ages. A period of dominance so long it makes all of human history, everything we've ever done, look like just a blink of an eye.
In a single, awful day, their entire dynasty was shattered. Their world just ended. So, how did it happen? What in the world could just erase these titans from the face of the Earth? Okay, let's dive into this incredible story of destruction and ultimately rebirth.
To really get what was lost, we first have to understand who they were. So let's meet Earth's former masters.
So the name itself, dinosaur, well, it comes from the Greek for terrible lizard, a pretty fitting name, right? It was coined back in 1841 by a British scientist named Richard Owen, as these gigantic fossils started to emerge, painting a picture of a world that was way older and frankly, way scarier than anyone had ever dreamed. But you gotta remember, their time on top wasn't just one long, unchanging era. Nope, it was more like this sprawling, epic story, with totally distinct chapters, each with its own incredible cast of characters. So you can basically break down the age of dinosaurs into three big acts. First up, you've got the Triassic period, on the supercontinent Pangaea, where the first smaller dinosaurs got their start. Then comes the one everybody knows, the Jurassic, where they got huge. And finally, you have the Cretaceous, which was the absolute peak of their power and diversity, right before the end. So, in the Triassic, you have these early ancestors, like the little 2-meter-long Eoraptor. The Jurassic gives us the colossal Titanosaurus, and even the first feathered dinosaurs like Archaeopteryx. But oh man, the Cretaceous, that was the main event. You had the king himself, T-Rex, mind-bogglingly huge herbivores like Argentinosaurus, and these speed demons that basically looked like giant ostriches.
Okay, and this is where our brains kind of short-circuit when we think about time. We tend to just lump all the dinosaurs together in our heads, right? But the Stegosaurus was already a fossil for millions of years by the time T-Rex ever showed up. In fact, get this, T-Rex lived closer in time to us than it did to the Stegosaurus. Yeah, just let that sink in for a minute.
So, for 170 million years, they were the undisputed champs. And then, 66 million years ago, it all came to a sudden, violent, and fiery end.
It all started with something hurtling in from space, an asteroid, somewhere between 10 and 15 kilometers wide. We're talking about an entire mountain falling out of the sky.
And its speed was just unreal, 30 kilometers per second. To put that in perspective, that's 150 times faster than a modern jet airliner. There was no seeing it coming, absolutely no time to do anything.
And when it finally hit, well, apocalyptic doesn't even begin to cover it. The energy it released was the same as 1 billion of the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima. I mean, 1 billion. This wasn't just an explosion, it was basically a planetary scale reset button.
And believe it or not, the impact itself was just the opening act. The real horror show came in the minutes and hours right after. First, there's this blinding flash that just vaporizes everything for thousands of kilometers. Then, superheated dust rains down all over the world, literally cooking animals alive. This kicks off mega tsunamis, some maybe 2 kilometers high, and it blasted so much rock and debris into the sky that it completely blocked out the sun, everywhere. But the real killer, the thing that finished the job, wasn't the fire or the blast. It was the darkness. For more than a year, a thick blanket of dust covered the entire planet. Photosynthesis just stopped. The plants died. Then the herbivores that ate the plants starved. And then the carnivores that ate them starved. The whole global food chain just collapsed, from the bottom all the way to the top. But here's the amazing thing. Even after all that, life finds a way, right? In the shadows of these fallen giants, a whole new world was just waiting to be born. And it kicked off the next incredible chapter for our planet. So who actually made it through all this? Well, it wasn't the biggest or the strongest. Nope. The survivors were the small ones. Creatures that could burrow underground or hide out underwater. Scavengers that could live off the scraps of a dead world. And here's the key fact. No 4-legged animal over about 25 kilos survived on land. The world was basically wiped clean of its rulers, leaving a huge, empty stage for a new cast of characters to take over. But wait, one group of dinosaurs did make it, the flying ones. And over millions of years, they evolved and adapted, and they became the birds you see flying around every single day. And that, my friends, leads to one of the absolute best fun facts in all of science. The closest living relative to the most terrifying predator that ever walked the earth, the Tyrannosaurus rex, is the chicken. Yeah, the chicken. Now, I know this whole thing sounds like a crazy sci-fi movie, but it's all true. So how on earth did scientists figure this all out? How did they piece together this 66-million-year-old crime scene?
Well, the first big clue was this weird element called iridium. See, you barely find any of it in the Earth's crust, but it's packed inside asteroids.
And what do you know? All over the globe, scientists kept finding this thin layer of clay that was full of iridium, and it dated to exactly 66 million years ago. This was the smoking gun. It was the dust from that vaporized asteroid that literally settled over the entire planet.
And then, finally, they found the crater, the scene of the crime. A massive 180-kilometer-wide crater now buried deep beneath the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The evidence was just undeniable. Case closed.
So, you see, the story of the dinosaurs isn't just some dusty old history lesson. It's actually a pretty profound and maybe even urgent warning for us today.
I mean, just look at this chart for a second. The dinosaur bar is massive, and ours, you can barely even see it. It really puts our place in the grand scheme of things into a humbling perspective, doesn't it?
You know, that asteroid caused what we call the fifth great mass extinction in our planet's history. Today, a lot of scientists are convinced the sixth one is already happening. The only difference is, this time, the cause isn't a rock from outer space. It's us.
So it all comes down to this one question. The dinosaurs had an incredible run, 600 times longer than we've even been around. They were taken out by a random cosmic accident. We seem to be creating our own catastrophe. Can we learn from what happened to them and actually secure a future for ourselves that's even a fraction as long as theirs?